How y'all doing? I'm Chris. You're watching Nature Here Now. So check this out. I realize it has been years and there's still something I haven't talked to you about yet. That is that is the king of the pond. And well, if you're in the western states, it's more like the monster of the pond. But in the eastern U.S., it is definitely the king of the pond. It is none other than the American bullfrog. Now, when I say king of the pond, I'm definitely not exaggerating. I mean, these amphibians can reach weights of over 1 pound. They can grow to lengths of just over 8 inches. And, thinking about it, these frogs can be rather voracious predators. I've seen them eat anything from, well, other frogs, fish, tadpoles. I've seen them eating snakes. Once I saw one with a mouse's tail hanging out its mouth. They'll eat baby turtles. Just anything that they can fit in that mouth is fair game on their menu. It's pretty impressive and could be rather intimidating if you're one of the animals out there in the landscape. Once the American bullfrog has grown to its fullest potential, there are not a whole lot of predators they have to fear. I mean, of course, they still worry about coyotes and foxes, some cats, human beings for sure, some of the bigger snakes, maybe snapping turtles, and northern pike love the bullfrogs. But still, within their ponds and creeks and rivers, there's not a whole lot of threats out there for the adult bullfrog. Speaking of water, these frogs will find just about any body of water and call it home. They're very commonly found among lakes and ponds, and they don't really worry about the fish because these frogs will be sitting around the edges of the lakes and stuff, whereas some of the other amphibians will just avoid that altogether. They're very common along rivers, of course, streams like this one, especially this spot right here where the water is kind of still and deep, prime bullfrog habitat. You can see them at vernal pools, sometimes even drainage ditches. As long as it's got water and plenty of food sources, the bullfrog does not mind and will probably move in and call it home. It's a good thing that these frogs prefer the larger bodies of water because if they favored the vernal pools and smaller pools, like the green frogs and tree frogs and all the others did, they'd probably eat them all. And we'd have just one or two species of frog, at least in Pennsylvania. I'm not kidding. They're so adaptive to a variety of water habitats that, back in the day, Americans introduced these bullfrogs to some of the western states to help cut down on insect pests and provide, well, game for people who like to eat frog legs. And, it's a very popular food source down south, out west, and of course, in certain other parts of the world, frog legs can still be purchased in restaurants and stuff. I've had them down south in Louisiana. Speaking of frog legs, their hind legs have some of the largest, most powerful muscles I've ever seen in a frog. There was one time, years ago, I was hanging out with my family and we were fishing one night, and sitting right next to us was a large bullfrog. This thing was like almost the size of my face. And after a while, I was like, I'm going to hold this frog. And I reached down for it, and it jumped away. That single bound wound up being 16 feet long. Anyhow, bullfrogs can often be mistaken or confused with green frogs, especially when they haven't grown to their full size. But there's a very easy way to tell you're looking at a bullfrog. If you look just behind the eye, you'll see this like dorsal lateral ridge, this line that goes, behind the eye. And if it's on a green frog, it travels most of the way down the back. If it's on a bullfrog, that ridge will travel around the tympanum, which is that large eardrum. If you see that ridge wrapping around the eardrum, you're definitely looking at a bullfrog. And the reason why I say that is because bullfrogs can come in a variety of colors and patterns. They're very often green, but I've seen them brown, I've seen them gray, I've seen them with dark brown spots all over their bodies. I've seen them where they were half brown and half green. And just like the green frogs, their patterns and colors can vary greatly. They're just generally green. Not only are those hind legs powerful jumping mechanisms, they're also great for propelling through the water. Their hind feet are highly webbed, and actually, if you spread those toes out, they could be like the size of a silver dollar or bigger in some individuals. It's crazy how big they can get. The front feet, well, there's no webbing on the front feet, and the color can actually vary greatly. My favorite ones are the ones with the bright yellow toes, but I've seen them with green toes, and I very often see them with white toes. Speaking of white, a lot of time their underbelly is white or kind of a brightish yellow. Along with many other amphibians in my region, the bullfrogs usually breed from April to June. Sometimes they'll breed a little bit later, and sometimes they'll start a little bit sooner. And it is very impressive how many eggs just a single female bullfrog can lay. It can be anywhere from 12,000 to I think 40,000 eggs. And it's really crazy actually watching them lay those eggs. You might ask yourself, how do they fit so many eggs, inside their bodies? Well, along with all the other amphibians, the eggs don't quite look the same as they do when we see them. Inside their bodies, they're really compressed and sort of dry. And when they hit water, there's special proteins within those eggs that soak up around 800 times their weight in water. So, there might be a mass this big inside the frog, but once it hits the water, it can fill up half the pool. It's crazy. Those eggs will hatch after a couple of weeks or so, and the pollywogs are actually, just like the adult frogs, they're huge. They'll be easily a couple inches in length, and they'll spend 2 years in the larval stage, which is what the tadpoles or pollywogs are. They're frog larvae, and they'll be feeding on, algae, other greenery, vegetative matter, and sometimes macro invertebrates. After a while, or if the pond starts to dry up, they'll spontaneously start to sprout legs, rear legs first, of course, and they absorb those tails, and once they become froglets, they'll leave the pond and pursue the career as adult predatory amphibians, intimidating the heck out of anything small enough to be swallowed down. Along with garter snakes, bullfrogs are probably the main culprit for starting that lifelong addiction known as herping. That is the pursuit or study of reptiles and amphibians. And that hobby ranks up there with sports, horse enthusiasts, and just about any other very popular activity known across the world. Now, a lot of people say the call of the bullfrog is the reason for their name because it sounds like, a male bull. I don't know. I can't see that connection. To me, it's more like their appearance and the way they stand there. But that call is like a it's like a very bassy drum-a-rum sound, and if you're close enough, you actually feel it vibrating in your chest when these frogs start to sing. And like all the other frogs, it's only the males that call out. That is, one, to establish territories, and of course male-to-male aggression. They're finding their place in the pond, their pecking order, and the other reason, of course, is to attract the females to the water and to win a mate, because everybody wants a girlfriend. Makes sense to me. I can relate. So, yeah, that's the American bullfrog, and needless to say, these are extremely impressive amphibians. Their size, their volume, just the volume of their call is incredible. You can hear these things sometimes half a mile away. I am not kidding you. And, watching them breed, watching them hunt, pretty much watching them do anything is so exciting, and it never fails to impress, the public when I take them on tours or any child that's around, you show them a bullfrog, you've got their full attention. Or I should say, the frog has their attention. I hope I had your attention for a few minutes, and I want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, I have a whole series on frogs, and probably my favorite amphibian video, I think it's the American toad one. That thing was so much fun to film, and I laughed so many times making that video. Anyhow, thanks a lot for watching. I'm Chris Ignato, signing out.